A question I get a lot this time of year is, should I shut down from throwing? We're going to define shutting down as not picking up a baseball at all, so no throwing whatsoever. A lot of people think that because they don't have a span of 6 to 8 weeks between games, it's a really good time to give their arm a rest and take a break from throwing, or maybe just throw once or twice a week. And that often leads to putting the player in a situation where they're not properly prepared or built back up for when they are required to pitch or throw again at a high level. And so they're actually doing themselves more harm than good by taking time off, even though that's something that they hear a lot from ASMI or these big organizations who frame it in a certain context of 2 months off is the best thing for your arm. And that while that is true, we have to apply it to certain contexts. So we will go into all those different situations and look at some individual situations where this is where we want to shut down, this is where we're going to go into velo building. But for the sake of today, we're just going to look at some general time tables of how long we want guys to shut down and then build up. And then let's work backwards and say, do I actually have that much time to do this properly? So again, if we're defining shutting down as no throwing whatsoever, we want to have 6 weeks to build back up. So from the time that they finish the shutdown period, they pick up a baseball on day one, they go through to a return to pitching program. At the end of the 6 weeks, they should be ready to throw about 100%. Now that is after doing both a workout program with us and arm care through the shutdown period, and then building back into actually throwing a baseball over those 6 weeks and using a lot of things like drive lines, throwing methods, and that sort of thing. But that is to get them to 100%. So they're actually ready to pitch either for a tryout, showcase, game, that sort of thing. So if we're looking for some people, and we live in Florida, a lot of guys have tryouts for travel ball around January. This year it's probably either the 7th or the 15th of January. And that's going to be for freshmen through juniors. That's going to be the date that they need to be ready to throw 100%. And it's going to depend on where they play this summer or possibly a college scholarship, depending on where they are in their career. If they're a senior, then maybe February 1st is the first game for them, or first scrimmage or exhibition game. So they're going to need to throw 100% by February 1st. That's a whole month difference. Obviously, these two people are going to be on different timetables throughout the fall, and that's just a small example of what we would have going on between someone that may be a sophomore and a senior. So we're going to start at that date and work backwards with this 6-week period. So if they're having to throw at the beginning of January, middle of into November, they're going to have to start building back up. And then from that date, ideally, with going off that 2 months, we want 2 months of shutdown. So no throwing for those 2 months. Again, that's kind of the agreed timetable that we look at. If it's hearing someone like Eric Cressy talk in the past about timetables that he has found best to shut down, or looking at research or ASMI or Dr. Andrews specifically about what they recommend for certain age groups and players, talking probably more in the 14 to 18-year-old range here. The 2 months is the recommended guidelines to help the shoulder heal a little bit and just deal with the trauma of throwing a baseball every day, which puts a lot of wear and tear on the joint. So that's the recommended amount. In Florida, it's really hard to do that. If they are one of these players that's finishing January 7th or needs to be ready to throw it 100% January 7th, this year, for that date, those guys are going to be finished around October 15th. So by that math, they would have their shutdown period is only going to be 1 month. This is when Jupiter is. So a lot of guys, that's one of the biggest tournaments in the country for the year. A lot of guys are finishing around October 15th. They're going to take 1 month off, and that's going to be their shutdown period, because that, now we look back at the 6 weeks, that's going to allow them to have 6 weeks to building up. If you start cutting into this 6 weeks, it puts you at a strain to get ready at 100% and really puts you behind the 8 ball to build up properly, in my opinion. So that's the gold number that we look at, and that's where we start to say, okay, I have some time off, should I shut down? It's not an automatic thing. A lot of guys play so much that as soon as they don't have games, they want to shut down throwing, but they don't give themselves enough time between their last game in the fall and their first game or the first high intensity throwing session in the spring to do a proper shutdown. So what I want you to get from all this is just because you don't have games, it doesn't mean it's a great idea to shut down. We'll get into some more of the nuances in some other videos later, but make sure that you have this 6 weeks to build back up if you want to do any type of extended shutdown period.